Her soles were soft, warm, and on my face. Welcome to Goddess Foot Confessions. Let's uncover what really happened. The evening had settled into a quiet hum, the kind that drapes itself gently over your skin and invites you to sink deeper into stillness. I was exhausted, the weight of the day pressing into my bones, and the soft light from the bedside lamp cast long shadows that danced lazily on the walls. She sat near me, calm and unhurried, bare feet tucked beneath her, toes occasionally flexing as if lost in thought. I couldn't help but notice the curve of her arch, the softness of her soles. Details that normally would have escaped me now felt magnetic. Without thinking, my hand found its way toward her foot, fingers grazing the warm skin of her heel. She didn't pull away. Instead, a slow smile curved her lips, as if the quiet contact spoke a language only we understood. Then, almost like a whispered secret, her foot slid gently across my lap and came to rest against my cheek. The warmth surprised me, the softness grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. My breath caught, and for a moment, the silence between us grew thick with something unspoken. Her toes flexed delicately, and my eyes traced the elegant line of her sole, each subtle movement sending a ripple through me. It was not just a touch. It was a message, a quiet invitation wrapped in softness and heat. I dared to meet her gaze. The room seemed to shrink around us, the rest of the world fading into the background. There, in the warmth of her bare skin against my face, I felt the beginnings of something profound, a connection that was gentle, intense, and entirely new. The softness lingered longer than I expected, the gentle pressure of her soul, a quiet reassurance against my skin. I remained still, afraid to break the fragile spell that had settled over the room. Her toes twitched slightly, as if testing the boundary, teasing the space between comfort and something uncharted. The subtle curve of her arch pressed into my cheek, and I could feel the heat radiating from her skin, a warmth that seeped deeper than flesh. I swallowed hard, my mind swirling with the sudden awareness of how delicate yet powerful these small moments could be. She shifted closer, her breath brushing against my neck, the faint scent of jasmine and something earthy filling my senses. The silence grew heavier, filled with a tension that was neither spoken nor ignored. I felt my heartbeat quicken, the faintest brush of her foot against my jaw sending a ripple through me that I couldn't control. I wanted to speak, to voice the flood of emotions rising inside me, but words caught in my throat. Instead, I let my fingers trace the outline of her ankle, marveling at the softness of her skin, the gentle strength beneath. Her eyes met mine again, steady, knowing, and patient. There was no rush, no expectation, just a quiet invitation to stay, to feel, to explore the space where hesitation met desire. And so, I stayed still, letting the warmth of her soles and the tenderness in her gaze anchor me in a moment that was both fragile and electric. Her foot moved again, sliding slowly from my cheek down to rest lightly on my collarbone. The softness of her soles was undeniable, warm, inviting, gentle weight that spoke volumes without a single word. I could feel every subtle ridge and curve beneath my skin, the smoothness of her heels like a whispered secret. I dared not breathe too loudly, afraid to disturb the fragile intimacy wrapping around us. My fingers twitched, longing to reach out and explore the delicate textures that were so close, so real. The warmth seemed to seep inside me, spreading like a quiet flame. She flexed her toes, the subtle movement catching the faint light, a slow dance of life and promise. The silence grew heavy, but it was comfortable, like the pause before a song begins or the breath before a dive. Her gaze met mine once again, steady and soft, as if encouraging me to let go of the walls I had built. I felt something shift inside, a stirring of hope, of longing, of something I hadn't dared name. In that moment, her soft soles pressed gently into my skin, grounding me in a presence I had never known but suddenly could not imagine living without. We sat close, the space between us charged with an electricity both subtle and undeniable. Her foot rested on my chest now, warm and steady, a quiet reminder that she was there, that this moment was real. Our eyes locked, and the silence spoke louder than any words could. The unspoken connection hummed beneath the surface, a language of glances, of touches, of breaths caught and released. I felt myself sinking into her presence, drawn not only to her warmth but to the safety she offered without force or demand. The curve of her arch, the delicate flex of her toes, the way her soul seemed to mold perfectly to me. It was as if she had become part of me in this shared stillness. Time lost meaning. The world beyond the room fell away, leaving only us and the soft rhythm of our breathing. Her foot moved slightly, brushing my throat, and I swallowed hard, caught in the gravity of a moment that held everything and nothing at once. My gaze wandered involuntarily down to her feet, bare, soft, inviting. The pale skin was flushed in places, the gentle pink of her soles glowing under the dim light. I couldn't stop staring at the curve of her arch, the way her toes flexed almost unconsciously. Each subtle movement sent a flutter through me, a silent pulse that echoed in my chest. Her feet told a story of quiet confidence, of vulnerability hidden beneath strength. The contrast made the tension between us even more palpable. I caught her watching me, a faint smile playing at her lips, as if she knew the effect she had but chose to wait patiently. The silence stretched, thick and warm, holding us both captive. Then, without warning, her foot brushed lightly against my thigh, accidental or not, and my breath hitched. The unspoken invitation was clear, and I was powerless to resist. She shifted closer, the warmth of her bare foot lingering on my skin. The room seemed to contract, every detail sharpening, the soft rustle of fabric, the steady beat of our hearts, the gentle flexing of her toes. Her foot found my hand, resting there lightly, almost hesitantly. I closed my fingers around it, savoring the softness, the warmth, the undeniable intimacy. The silence grew even thicker, filled with a tension that was electric yet tender. Our eyes met, and in that gaze was a world of meaning, trust, curiosity, a longing that neither of us dared speak aloud. The moment stretched, delicate and fragile, suspended between what was and what could be. I felt myself leaning in, drawn by a force both gentle and irresistible. The brush of her skin against mine was a promise whispered in a language only we could understand. The weight of her foot in my hand was both grounding and electrifying. She didn't pull away, but instead gave a small sigh, her eyes reflecting a rare softness, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. For a heartbeat, the walls between us seemed to fall away. I wanted to speak, to say something comforting, but words felt too heavy. Instead, I gently squeezed her foot, my thumb tracing slow circles along the arch, as if trying to communicate all the things I couldn't say. She shifted slightly, nestling closer, her toes curling around my wrist in a gesture that was both hesitant and sure. The warmth of her skin seeped into me, stirring something deep, a quiet ache mixed with the comfort of being seen. The silence between us was no longer empty. It was filled with something fragile yet powerful, a shared understanding, a promise held in the space where words could not reach. She settled back, the bare soles of her feet now fully exposed to me, soft, warm, and confident. The gentle rise of her arches and the delicate flex of her toes spoke of a grace that was natural and unforced. Her gaze met mine with a steady calm, as if daring me to explore this new territory with her. There was strength in the simplicity of her bare feet, a silent power in their vulnerability. I traced my fingers along the smooth curve of her heel, marveling at how something so delicate could hold such quiet command. The faint scent of jasmine and warmth surrounded us, wrapping the room in a cozy intimacy. She shifted again, her foot brushing softly against my arm, a subtle touch that sent a shiver rippling through me. The tension between us was no longer just curiosity. It had blossomed into something tender and urgent. We moved closer together, the space between us shrinking until it felt like we were breathing the same air, connected in a way that went beyond words. Her foot found its way to my hand once more, resting there like an anchor in a storm. The softness of her soles contrasted with the firmness of her touch, a delicate balance that mirrored the complexities in our eyes. Our breaths mingled, slow and steady, creating a rhythm that pulsed between us. Her toes flexed, pressing gently into my palm, and I felt the unmistakable flutter of something electric, an invitation, a question without words. I looked up, catching her gaze in the dim light. It was steady and warm, full of quiet courage. In that moment, everything else fell away, leaving just us and the unspoken connection growing stronger by the second. The room seemed to close in around us, the night folding softly like a blanket. Her foot rested lightly on my chest, the heat radiating from her skin a soothing balm to my restless thoughts. I wrapped my fingers around her ankle, careful and reverent, feeling the pulse of life beneath the surface. The curve of her heel fit perfectly in my palm, a small perfect world of softness and warmth. Her eyes held mine steadily, the faintest smile touching her lips. No words were needed. This was a language of touch and presence, a silent conversation that drew us ever closer. The world outside the room faded to a distant hum, irrelevant and far away. Here, in this quiet cocoon of shared warmth and gentle pressure, I felt safe, seen, and something more, a stirring that promised a journey neither of us could yet fully understand. The weight of her foot resting gently in my hand was unlike anything I had experienced before, both grounding and electrifying all at once. I hesitated, afraid to move too quickly, yet unwilling to let go. Her skin was soft and warm, the slight give beneath my fingers a reminder of her humanity, her fragility. She didn't pull away. Instead, she sighed softly, a breath caught somewhere between relief and surrender, her eyes reflecting a tenderness I hadn't seen before, an openness, a vulnerability that felt like a quiet invitation. The world around us seemed to blur and soften. I wanted to speak, to say something comforting, reassuring, but the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I let my thumb trace slow, careful circles along the arch of her foot, the motion deliberate and gentle, as if to communicate everything I couldn't put into words. The subtle pulse beneath my touch was a secret language between us. She shifted slightly, leaning closer, the movement so soft I barely noticed until her toes curled around my wrist in a hesitant yet sure gesture. The warmth of her skin radiated into me, a quiet ache awakening inside, a mix of yearning and comfort that settled deep within my chest. Her presence was like a balm, soothing old wounds I had carried for far too long. For a long moment, the silence between us was no longer empty or awkward. Instead, it was charged, filled with an unspoken promise, a delicate trust forming in the space where words had failed us. I could feel her breathing slow, her body relaxing into mine, and I understood that this moment, this fragile connection, was something rare and beautiful. It was the beginning of a journey neither of us fully understood yet, but both were willing to explore. She settled back comfortably, her bare feet now fully revealed to me in all their quiet grace. The soft, pale skin of her soles glowed warmly under the dim light, and the gentle rise of her arches and the subtle flexing of her toes conveyed a natural confidence that was impossible to ignore. There was something deeply alluring in the way she carried herself barefoot, a silent power in her vulnerability, a boldness wrapped in softness. Our eyes met, steady and calm, as if she was daring me to venture further into this uncharted territory of intimacy and trust. There was no rush, no expectation, only a quiet invitation that filled the room with an electric tension. I traced my fingers lightly along the curve of her heel, marveling at how delicate yet strong her foot felt beneath my touch. The skin was warm, scented faintly with jasmine and the earthy traces of her day, wrapping the space between us in a cozy, intimate aura. She shifted ever so slightly, the tip of her foot brushing softly against my forearm, a subtle contact that sent an unexpected shiver rippling through my body. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface blossomed suddenly into something tender and urgent. I was caught between awe and longing, mesmerized by the simple, silent communication conveyed through the lightest of touches. Her gaze held mine again, unwavering and warm, and in that shared moment, the room seemed to contract until it was just the two of us, connected by the gentle pulse of skin against skin, by the unspoken promises woven in the spaces between breaths. We moved closer together almost instinctively, drawn by a force neither of us tried to resist. The space between us shrank until it felt like we were breathing the same air, connected in a way that words could never capture. Her foot found its way to my hand once more, resting there lightly like an anchor in a swirling storm, steady and reassuring. The softness of her soles contrasted beautifully with the firmness of her touch, delicate yet commanding, mirroring the complexity of the emotions in our eyes. Every breath mingled between us, slow and steady, creating a rhythm that pulsed softly through the room. Her toes flexed gently, pressing into my palm as if sending a secret message, an invitation to deepen the connection. I lifted my gaze to meet hers in the dim, intimate light. Her eyes were steady, warm, and full of quiet courage. It was a look that spoke volumes, trust, curiosity, and a longing that neither of us dared put into words. For a moment, everything else, the world beyond the walls of the room, fell away, leaving just us suspended in this fragile yet powerful bubble of closeness. The brush of her foot against my skin sent tiny sparks racing along my nerves. I felt both exposed and protected at once, caught in a delicate dance where vulnerability and strength intertwined seamlessly. That closeness, that silent conversation through touch and gaze, was a language we were only beginning to learn, but it was already the most profound connection I had ever known. The night folded softly around us, drawing the room into a warm embrace that felt like a cocoon. Her foot rested lightly on my chest, the heat radiating from her skin, soothing my restless thoughts and steadying the storm of emotions swirling within me. The delicate weight of her soul was a quiet presence that anchored me in the moment, grounding me like nothing else could. I wrapped my fingers carefully around her ankle, reverent and tentative, feeling the subtle pulse of life beneath the surface of her skin. The curve of her heel fit perfectly into my palm, a small world of softness and warmth that I wanted to hold onto forever. Her skin was smooth, the faintest hint of moisture from the day lingering, blending with the faint scent of lavender that clung gently to her. Our eyes met and held steadily, her lips curving into the faintest smile, quiet, knowing, and filled with a gentle reassurance. No words were needed here. This was a language beyond speech, where every touch and glance conveyed what was too delicate for sound. It was a conversation in presence and feeling in the spaces between breaths. Outside the room, the world dimmed to a distant murmur, irrelevant and far away. Within this small, quiet space, everything we needed was present. The shared warmth, the softness of skin, and the silent promises held in gentle contact. I felt safe, seen, and profoundly alive, drawn into a stirring that was as tender as it was undeniable. The bond between us deepened in the quiet dark, a slow flame ignited by the warmth of her soles against my chest, a secret fire burning steadily beneath the surface of a night that promised new beginnings. The room had grown quieter still, the only sounds those of our breathing, slow, even in sync with the gentle beating of our hearts. Her foot remained resting softly on my chest, a tender weight that seemed to carry all the comfort and warmth I had longed for without realizing it. I felt anchored by her presence, the silent comfort folding around me like a protective shield against the outside world. I lowered my hand to cradle her ankle again, fingers tracing the fine bones beneath her skin with reverence. The softness of her soul against my skin sent waves of calm through me, a balm for the ache I had carried so silently. I could sense the strength in her vulnerability, the courage it took to bear herself so openly in this quiet moment. It made me want to be just as brave, to match her quiet confidence with my own. Her toes flexed ever so slightly, the motion almost unconscious but somehow deliberate, a small sign that this connection between us was alive and breathing. I swallowed, feeling the warmth rise in my chest, a fluttering sensation that danced just beneath the surface. The silence wasn't empty or awkward. It was full of possibility, heavy with unspoken promises and shared understanding. I dared to lift my gaze to meet hers. Her eyes were soft, radiant in the dim light, reflecting the same yearning I felt inside. There was no need for words here. Our bodies spoke fluently through touch and presence, each subtle movement a declaration of trust and acceptance. Time seemed to slow, stretching the moment out like a delicate thread between us. I realized then that this was more than just comfort. It was an unspoken covenant, a mutual surrender to something deeper and more profound. And though I couldn't yet name it, I felt ready to follow wherever it might lead. My eyes traced the elegant curve of her foot once more, lingering on the arch where light and shadow played together like a delicate dance. The softness of her skin, flushed lightly with warmth, captivated me in a way that words could never capture. Every subtle shift, the flexing of her toes, the gentle roll of her heel, felt like an invitation wrapped in grace and quiet power. I caught my breath, heart quickening as the tension between us tightened into something more tangible. The air around us seemed charged, electric yet gentle, as if every molecule had conspired to heighten this moment of closeness. My fingers itched to reach out again, to explore the contours I had memorized with my eyes, but I held back, afraid that eagerness might shatter the fragile intimacy we had built. Her foot brushed lightly against my cheek, and I gasped softly, startled by the warmth that surged through me. It was a touch so fleeting, yet so precise, that it sent ripples across my skin. I looked up to find her watching me, a slow smile curving her lips as if she understood the effect she had. The silence between us deepened, thickening with desire and uncertainty. It was a moment suspended in time, balanced precariously on the edge of what was and what could be. I felt caught between awe and longing, drawn to her in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The scent of her skin mingled with the faint aroma of lavender, wrapping around me in a heady embrace. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out all else but the subtle sound of her breathing, the gentle brush of her foot against my face. In that instant, everything else faded. Only her, only us suspended in the glow of unspoken desire. Our voices finally broke the silence, but only in whispers, low, slow, and layered with meanings far deeper than the words themselves. We spoke cautiously, sharing fragments of thoughts and feelings that had long remained locked away, guarded by fear and uncertainty. Her foot still rested in my hand, warm and steady, as if drawing strength from our conversation. Each phrase we exchanged was gentle, like a soft caress, building a fragile bridge between our hearts. It felt as though we were navigating a secret world, one that only the two of us could see and understand. She spoke of trust, of past wounds and present hopes, her words carrying the weight of vulnerability without losing their quiet strength. I listened, absorbing every syllable, every pause, feeling the distance between us shrink with every shared confession. I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't before, revealing fears and desires I had buried beneath layers of caution. Her toes curled lightly around my wrist, a small gesture of encouragement that sent warmth flooding through me. The night deepened around us, the room bathed in a soft glow that seemed to hold our whispered secrets close. There was no judgment here, only acceptance, and a growing sense of connection that defied explanation. In that space, I felt seen in a way I never had before, held not just by her touch, but by the honesty of our words. It was as if the world outside had ceased to exist, leaving only the two of us, intertwined in this delicate dance of trust, hope, and longing. And though the future remained uncertain, in this moment, nothing else mattered. Without a word, she shifted closer and extended her foot toward me, the soft pads resting tentatively in my lap. I hesitated for a moment, overwhelmed by the tenderness of the gesture, but then my fingers moved instinctively, curling gently around the arch. The warmth of her skin beneath my touch was intoxicating, a subtle pulse that seemed to sync with the rhythm of my own heartbeat. I began to massage slowly, applying careful pressure to the soft curves of her soul, tracing the delicate lines and ridges that told stories of a day's journey. She closed her eyes, a quiet sigh escaping her lips as her body relaxed into the comfort of my hands. The tension that had lingered in the room seemed to melt away, replaced by a growing intimacy that was as soothing as it was electric. Each movement was deliberate, a silent conversation between us. Her toes flexed and curled in response, sending shivers up my arm, while her breathing deepened, steady and rhythmic. I felt a rush of protectiveness mixed with desire, a yearning to care for her in this small yet profound way. The soft glow of the lamp cast shadows that danced across her skin, highlighting the gentle rise and fall of her chest and the delicate arch of her foot beneath my fingers. The room felt suspended in time, a sanctuary carved out by touch and trust. In that quiet, tender moment, I realized that this simple act of massage was more than just physical. It was a bridge to something deeper, a wordless promise of connection and care. And as I held her foot, warm and soft in my hands, I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. The room was cloaked in a heavy silence, yet every breath we took seemed amplified in the stillness. My fingers continued to massage her soul gently, marveling at how supple and warm her skin felt beneath my touch. Then, almost imperceptibly, her foot shifted, a slight movement, a subtle glide, and suddenly her toes brushed lightly against my cheek. The contact was brief, delicate, but it sent a ripple through me that I couldn't ignore. My breath hitched, and I froze for a moment, caught between surprise and a quiet thrill that pulsed deep inside. Was it truly accidental? Or was there a purpose in that soft, teasing brush? I wasn't sure, but the question hung between us, charged with unspoken meaning. Her eyes met mine, steady and serene, as if daring me to acknowledge the moment without breaking the fragile spell. I felt the warmth of her skin lingering against my face, a tether pulling me closer into the gravity of the moment. My heartbeat quickened, each thump echoing the silent plea building inside me. I wanted to reach out, to pull her closer, but hesitation kept me still, the fear of crossing an invisible line holding me back. Instead, I let the brush of her foot linger in my mind, replaying the softness and warmth like a secret melody. It was as though that fleeting touch had unlocked something within me, a new awareness of how deeply drawn I was to her, how every simple gesture carried a weight far greater than its surface. The silence between us thickened, wrapping us in a cocoon of shared tension and fragile anticipation. I could feel the pull of her presence, a magnetic force drawing me toward the unknown. And though the future was uncertain, in that moment, I knew I was willing to follow wherever this quiet connection might lead. The room seemed to hold its breath with us, the soft glow from the lamp casting gentle shadows that flickered and danced on the walls. Her foot remained resting lightly against my cheek, warmth radiating through the thin skin, anchoring me in a moment that felt both suspended and inevitable. Our eyes locked in an unspoken conversation, the space between us charged with a tension that was neither fearful nor rushed. It was a pause, a stillness pregnant with possibility, where every heartbeat was a word and every breath a sentence. I felt myself leaning closer, drawn by a force that was as gentle as it was irresistible. The softness of her soles against my skin was a balm and a spark, soothing my doubts even as it ignited a quiet fire inside. My fingers trembled slightly as I lifted a hand toward her ankle, the weight of the moment pressing down with a sweet gravity. Her gaze never wavered, steady and encouraging, as if silently urging me to take the next step into this fragile intimacy. There was no urgency, only a patient invitation to explore the space where hesitation met desire, where vulnerability blossomed into trust. I closed the short distance between us, fingertips brushing along the delicate curve of her heel, tracing the outline with reverence. The warmth of her skin flooded my senses, the faint scent of lavender mingling with the quiet night air. In that pause before everything changed, I realized that this moment was a crossroads, where fear met hope, and what was unspoken found its voice in the language of touch. And as our breaths mingled in the quiet room, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. The warmth from her foot still lingered against my cheek as I brought my hand gently to cradle her heel. My fingers moved slowly, reverently, following the soft curves that felt like a secret map guiding me deeper into her world. Each touch was deliberate, tender, a silent promise held in the language of skin against skin. Her toes flexed softly in response, curling and uncurling as if inviting me further, coaxing me into this delicate dance of closeness and trust. The gentle pressure beneath my palm pulsed with life, a quiet rhythm that seemed to echo my own heartbeat. I felt a swell of protectiveness mixed with longing rising inside me, a yearning to care for her not just in this small gesture, but in every unspoken moment we shared. Her skin was warm, the faint sheen of moisture from the day still clinging delicately, and the subtle scent of jasmine wrapped around us like a whispered secret. Our eyes met again, full of quiet understanding and a depth of emotion that needed no words. In that gaze was a reassurance, a confirmation that this tenderness was safe, welcomed, and cherished. The room around us seemed to fade, leaving only the two of us suspended in this fragile bubble of intimacy. The light flickered softly, casting dancing shadows that played across her skin and illuminated the steady rise and fall of her chest. As I held her heel gently in my hand, I realized this moment was more than a simple caress. It was a bridge, a connection that transcended words and fears, binding us together in trust and warmth. And though the path ahead was uncertain, I felt ready to walk it with her, hand in hand, heart to heart. The room was filled with a hush as I finally found the courage to voice the quiet stirrings inside me. My fingers lingered on her foot, tracing slow circles along the arch, as if the motion could steady my racing thoughts. The words felt fragile, barely more than a whisper, yet they carried the weight of everything I'd kept locked away. I don't know how to explain it, I murmured, my voice trembling slightly. But there's something about being this close, something that feels like home, like safety, like something I've been searching for without realizing. Her eyes softened, warm and patient, encouraging me to continue. The gentle pressure of her soul against my palm felt like a steady heartbeat, a grounding force in the swirling tide of emotions. I swallowed hard, taking a slow breath. It's not just desire, I said, voice low. It's more. It's trust, it's connection. It scares me because it's new, but it also feels so right. She didn't rush me, didn't fill the silence. Instead, she held my gaze with quiet understanding, her toes curling gently around my wrist in a silent embrace. That simple gesture said more than words ever could. It was acceptance, reassurance, a promise to walk beside me on whatever path this was. In the stillness that followed, I felt a swell of relief, as if a burden I hadn't known I was carrying had been lifted. The warmth of her foot in my hand, the softness of her skin against mine, and the tenderness in her eyes wove together into a quiet confession of our shared vulnerability. We didn't need to say more. The room hummed with possibility, and in that fragile, sacred space, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. Her eyes held mine with a steady calm that seemed to quiet every doubt I had harbored. The warmth of her foot resting gently in my hand was a quiet reassurance, a tangible proof that I was not alone in this new, uncharted territory we were entering. She didn't rush me with words or demands. Instead, her presence was a grounding force, a steady flame burning softly against the encroaching shadows of uncertainty. I watched as her toes flexed slowly, almost rhythmically, a subtle sign that she was fully present, open to this fragile connection we were weaving together. The softness of her sole beneath my palm radiated a warmth that seeped deeper than skin, reaching into places I had long forgotten existed. It was a language without words, spoken through touch and shared breath, a promise whispered in the quiet of the night. Her smile was gentle, knowing, a beacon of understanding that made the ache inside me feel less like fear and more like hope. She reached out then, her fingers brushing lightly against mine, grounding me in the moment, reminding me that this path was not mine alone to navigate. The room around us felt suspended, caught between the past and a future that neither of us could fully see but both were willing to face. Her steady presence, her silent acceptance, filled the space with a sense of safety I hadn't dared hope for. I felt my own heart slow, matching the gentle cadence of hers. In that calm, steady response, I found a new courage. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever uncertainties threatened to rise, I knew that with her beside me, I could face them all. And as her foot rested lightly against my skin, I understood that this was only the beginning of trust, of love, and of a bond that would deepen with every quiet, tender moment we shared. The boundaries between us softened, blurred by the quiet intimacy that had grown over hours, days, and countless shared glances. What had once been a simple closeness, the comfort of familiar presence, now felt transformed into something richer, deeper. The relationship we had known was evolving, shifting into a delicate dance where trust and desire intertwined in ways I hadn't anticipated. Her bare feet, once unnoticed, had become symbols of a connection that was as physical as it was emotional. The softness of her soles against my skin was no longer just a touch. It was a language of vulnerability and strength, a silent conversation that spoke louder than words ever could. I found myself craving the warmth of her skin, the subtle flex of her toes, the way her arches curved perfectly beneath my hands. Our proximity became electric, each brush of her foot against mine sending waves of awareness through me. The air between us seemed charged with possibility, the kind of tension that held both promise and uncertainty. Yet, in that tension, I found a strange comfort, a reassurance that what we shared was real and profound. We no longer needed to define the relationship in conventional terms. Labels felt too small, too confining for the complexity unfolding between us. Instead, we simply existed in this new closeness, allowing it to deepen naturally, day by day. Each moment, each touch, each glance, wove a thread stronger than before, binding us in a way that felt inevitable. I realized then that closeness had been redefined for me. It was no longer just about proximity or familiarity. It was about presence, trust, and the quiet courage to embrace a connection that transcended all boundaries. The night wrapped around us like a velvet cloak, soft and embracing. The quiet rhythm of the rain tapping gently against the window pane created a soothing backdrop, a lullaby that seemed to echo the steady beating of our hearts. Inside, the room was warmed by the flickering firelight, casting shadows that danced delicately across the walls and highlighted the tender contours of her bare feet resting lightly against my cheek. Her soles were soft, warm, and familiar now, an anchor in the darkness. The intimacy between us had deepened beyond words, rooted in the silent exchanges of touch and breath. I felt the subtle rise and fall of her chest as she leaned closer, the warmth of her skin pressing against mine in a quiet confession of trust and belonging. Our hands found each other in the dim glow, fingers intertwining in a gentle grip that spoke of comfort and promise. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only this moment, this shared stillness filled with 1,000 unspoken emotions. The rain's steady patter seemed to sync with the slow pulse of desire blossoming between us, delicate yet undeniable. Each brush of her foot against my face was a whisper of connection, a tender exploration of new territory. The lines between affection and longing blurred, creating a space where both could coexist peacefully. In the quiet deep of night, surrounded by warmth and soft shadows, I realized that this closeness was more than a passing moment. It was a beginning, an unfolding story written in the language of skin and silence, trust and tenderness. Words had long since given way to something more profound, an unspoken understanding that connected us beyond the reach of language. Our gazes held steady, full of silent promises and shared secrets that needed no explanation. The gentle pressure of her foot against my cheek was a steady pulse in the quiet room, a physical reminder of the bond growing between us. We existed in a space where time slowed, where every glance, every touch, every breath was infused with meaning. The world outside faded to a distant hum, irrelevant compared to the intensity of this shared presence. I could feel the warmth of her skin seep into me, melting away fears and doubts with a quiet certainty. Her toes flexed softly, curling around my wrist in a tender embrace that said more than words ever could. It was a gesture of acceptance, of encouragement, a reassurance that we were walking this path together. I responded by tightening my grip gently, anchoring us both in this fragile moment. The silence between us was not empty. It was full of trust, hope, and the growing realization that this connection was unlike any I had known. It was a safe harbor, a place where vulnerability was met with care and desire with patience. In that unspoken understanding, I found peace. Whatever challenges awaited, whatever uncertainties the future held, I knew that we had found something rare and beautiful, something that would carry us through, no matter what. The air between us crackled with a quiet anticipation as our eyes met in the soft glow of the room. The world had narrowed to the space between us, charged with the electric hum of unspoken emotions. Slowly, almost hesitantly, I leaned in, drawn by a force that was both gentle and irresistible. Her breath hitched softly as our lips met in a kiss that was tentative yet full of promise. It was a kiss that spoke of trust earned and boundaries gently crossed, a delicate blending of vulnerability and desire. The softness of her skin against mine was intoxicating, a silent confession of everything we had both been holding back. We lingered there, the kiss deepening into a tender exploration, every touch and breath weaving us closer together. The warmth of her bare feet pressed softly against my skin grounded me, anchoring this moment in the reality of her presence. When we finally parted, our eyes remained locked, filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The kiss had changed everything, opening a door to a new chapter where intimacy was not just physical but emotional, a shared journey into the unknown. In that first kiss of trust, I felt a joy unlike any I had known, a quiet certainty that whatever came next, we would face it together. Dawn crept softly through the curtains, casting a gentle glow that bathed the room in warm, golden light. The quiet stillness of morning wrapped around us like a promise, a new beginning after the tender night we had shared. She lay beside me, her bare feet resting lightly against my side, soft and warm, their familiar touch a comforting anchor. I traced the delicate curve of her soles with my fingers, marveling at how something so simple could hold such profound meaning. The intimacy we had found in the darkness now seemed to glow in the clarity of morning, a silent testament to the connection that had blossomed between us. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting mine with a softness that spoke of peaceful surrender and quiet happiness. There were no words needed, The warmth in her gaze said everything. The promise of a shared future, the strength of trust, and the beauty of a love that transcended all expectations. We lay there in the morning light, wrapped in the quiet joy of new beginnings. The world outside stirred awake, but here, in this small sanctuary of softness and warmth, time seemed to slow. With her soul still resting gently against me, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we had already found something unbreakable. And as the sun rose higher, filling the room with light, I felt ready to walk whatever path came next, together.